Shakira decided to put us in a group chat with the Lord magazine and tell us that her sons found the Barbie movie emasculating. What? Alright, you white motherfuckers, all eyes on me. This is the I Refuse podcast. This is Miss Fox, the I Refuse podcast. Welcome back. Made it this close to the weekend, and y'all are just cutting up. Like, we're still in the throes of surviving Did He Do It. I just posted a new episode yesterday on the podcast. Available on Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, Overcast, Google Cast, wherever you get your podcast. I Refuse Podcast is available, Season 5, everywhere. Before I get into Shakira, though, I'm going to mix it up a little bit on the channel for this particular video, and maybe other videos as I please, to do a couple of housekeeping items. I, for one, do not feel bad for Giselle trolling Candace during the Real Housewives of Potomac reunion recently. Particularly the part that has the timeline on the Bird app set itself on fire. We are so over this girl doing the fake crime routine. You know, we are, 2 seasons... This is 2 seasons after her making the entire season about a dry napkin up to her eye and Post-it notes all over the bathroom mirror, all because she lost a fight to Monique that she provoked. A lot of y'all almost fell for that throughout the whole season, but I got off the back of the bus probably 2 episodes in, and that was around the time I was like, you know what? I'm going to check out for a little bit. There's no coming back from going after the people you work with. Now, I understand that, the GEBs are perceived as the mean girls, but there's also other alternatives to coming at them, because it's giving like you want to be friends with them and you want to be cool with them. But you're trying so hard to overcompensate, right? And I know that Candace has a vicious mouth, but there's no coming back from dwindling uterus, wide back, big forehead, multiple B words, all kinds of name calling and stuff. And on top of you feeling frustrated that the goalpost is always moving. Yes. Keep in mind, though, that throughout the entire time that you've been on this show, particularly post-Monique, you've been coming at them a lot. Particularly over Chris, which on, the one hand I understand, but on the other it's like, why even give him that much energy and that much power? And for that to be the focal point the past season and a half, it's like, you're going this hard for a white man. If it's not true, just say your piece and move on. And keep your distance. But for when I've seen this past season, it's like, there's a part of you that still wants to be cool with the two of them. And unfortunately, how you're going about it is undoing that. And not one single tear fell. So, yeah, I don't feel any kinds of bad about it. And I don't even like the GEBs as much as I used to the earlier seasons. they're not going to feel any emotional connection to fault or guilt or shame because at the end of the day, they don't have to. They're on an ensemble cast where they don't have to do any heavy lifting. I mean, Robin just got fired allegedly, so she's out of a job. It'll be interesting to see how Giselle moves without her wingman kind of jumping in front of her birth canal. But a lot of us on the timeline are saying a large part of the reason why Giselle's not taking her serious during the reunion is because everybody knew that Candace was leaving. But quiet as a cat, I mean, the last 2 or 3 seasons, Candace wasn't really giving much but toxic mouth, no feeling of growth or evolution from the Monique situation. And there was ultimately no change in the dynamic to where Robin and Giselle moved differently. Robin was still doing the minimum, and at some point expected people to give a shit about what she's going through, while also being defensive and pushing back on the other ladies. It'll be interesting though, because if the GEBs or, Giselle and Ashley don't have somebody to go back and forth with that they haven't already, it's going to be a matter of time before they get the boot. So that's where I'm at with that. Secondly, I don't 100% believe Lizzo's statement. This about this. She's tired of the industry, the social media dragging her, and people dragging her, and people doing this and people doing that. Because you took it upon yourself to make appearances while in the shadow of this suit, the civil suit, which only made people like side eye you, like, oh, why would you even go to the Grammys and all this other stuff? And while a lot of us have moved on, I've said my piece on the Usual Suspects podcast about it. I'm definitely a firm believer that 2 things can be true. One being that the dancers went to the club in question on their own volition, had a good time. There was a couple of group photos at the same club after, the evening or, the visit concluded, and everybody was smiling. But also, the other thing can be true is that Melissa, that's her government first name, and her team were mean to their dancers. Fat shaming, weight shaming, creating an environment where they're forced to give personal details upon which it was weaponized against them. Multiple things can be true. But here's the thing that really trips me out. What you're experiencing now, Melissa, is a direct result of public's perception of you following, the suit, the details and the interviews and stuff being released. Had you just kind of laid low another year and a half, not said anything, not spoken, kind of just stayed, I don't know, went to Switzerland or Ireland and kind of just stayed minding your business, things would have, played its course and people would have probably forgot. Now, that's not to say that people's opinions aren't a reflection of a bias they had against you being a plus size woman. That could be very much true. Um, but we tend to move on to other shit. Like there's so much crazy shit happening on a week by week basis. A lot of people probably just moved on. Now the opinion or the feeling may have stayed the same, but people get, people's opinions and feelings change with the shape of the moon. Like, Yep always says. But here's what trips me out about it. It's like, it's said that the real reason why you're quitting is because what you want allegedly to happen with the suit is not happening. Like you wanted allegedly for the information and the details of what's happening between legal teams or whatever to be sealed. And the judge allegedly denied that, which means it's going to proceed forward. This civil case is going to proceed forward. Which leads me to believe that like there may have been an opportunity on the table for you to settle and you chose not to. And everybody that knows or should know is that while it may be more damaging to settle, it's actually more cost effective to do so. Because the moment a trial goes forward, the only parties that make the most money really are the lawyers. And, not everybody out here has the critical thought that, it's just, it's unfortunate. So what, Melissa may be a mean girl. There are a lot of mean girls out here. A lot of people could possibly separate the person from the artistry. It's not going to bring me to the music any sooner personally. Like, her music never did much for me. I mean, I did give, Tempo, a couple of spins. But I couldn't tell you one single album or EP by Lizzo that I played. But I understand and respect the talent and the demographic that it's for. It's just not speaking to me. But I get the move. Like, very, very commercial. I think I've heard some of her songs in some of the commercials. But it's like you're not going anywhere. And the last place you want to be, especially during a dark clouds like this, is to be on social media and to be vulnerable and show everybody else that you're sweating and that you're feeling the pressure and you can't take the criticism, which is ironic to me because you're criticized all the time as a musician. Whether you're credible or not, whether it's real or not. And people are entitled to their opinions. That's why you gotta have a thicker skin. Like you and Cardi B. But this could also be a ploy to keep people's attention. Who knows? But Lizzo isn't going anywhere. And you've worked so hard the last 10 or 15 years to get to this point. At the end of the day, just delete Twitter. Delete your Twitter account, delete your Instagram account, and do your music. It isn't helping, though, if what they're saying is true that you wanted to have it sealed, because it's like, what you got to hide? Like, I said on the podcast, like, it was weird to me that people when people are interviewed about a suit, some of their answers are like, well, we had a feeling and this and that. And I was like, you stayed the entire time and didn't leave. And you took pictures. And nobody forced you to do anything. Like, it's okay to still have your dignity and self-respect. And people will probably take that as victim blaming and victim shaming, but with just seeing you know what? With just seeing a banana and some meat curtains and a person telling you to eat it, how does that make you a victim? You still have a choice. Like, you still have a choice. Whether you're Lizzo or the CEO of Twizzlers, just saying. But like I said, the red flag is that why were you pressing it to be sealed and for, essentially the case not to move forward? Like, I personally don't care. Like, how, what's going on over there. A lot of people, other people, I feel are like so wrapped up in the image and the positivity of the music that they actually think that people are like that 24/7. And a lot of people probably view this music as all music to be disposable, so they don't take it seriously or associate the artist as a person to the stresses and stuff like that, and think, oh well, she's got some nerve to be doing that if that's true. I mean, if it was me, I would have went straight for the dance captain. I mean, that is some weird shit, but I also am of the real world where there are a lot of weird people out here. Just don't know how to have a conversation. Always go straight to the personal shit. Especially in the workplace. That's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother video. But you never really get much sympathy out of me over you being tired of being dragged. Like, stop coming to the internet. Take a 2-year vacation. Continue to do your art. And everything will work itself out. But moving on, the reason why y'all are here is because I wanted to talk about Shakira. Now, normally I'm not in white people's business or white people adjacent's business. But Shakira is funny. The same Shakira that said her hips don't lie, the same Shakira that said whenever, wherever, whatever. Huge international Colombian vocalist, right? I guess in support of her latest album, which includes one of the songs featuring Cardi B. She did a sit-down interview with Allure magazine, and shared with the magazine, another outlet sharing it with us, that she went to go take her sons to see the Barbie movie, and claims that her sons, 11 and 9, didn't like the movie, found it to be emasculating, and didn't understand why men had to be put down and not seen as just as empowering and just as important and just as valuable. And I was sitting there like, here she go. Here she go. Here she go. First of all, um, your sons are 11 and 9 years old. They probably can't even spell emasculation. They probably don't even know what that word means. If anything, that's you saying that and you probably teaching them that shit. And here's the thing. Even having not seen the Barbie movie, even having not played with Barbies, like I did play with a Barbie like when I was young, but even with all of that, I can still say that the point of the Barbie movie, the reason why it was female centered, stems from the history of the doll and the inspiration for why it was created and the pushback it received when at the time it came out. When Barbie first came out, the doll and the toy and everything, it came out at a time when women's expectation or domestic range was limited to the kitchen and the bedroom. This is before women were burning their bras. This was before, Gloria Steinem. This was before the huge women's liberation movement in the 60s and the 70s. This is still removed, couple of years or a decade or so removed from, or a generation from, women being allowed to vote, but still reduced to roles of a housewife. If you had a job, the pay wasn't anywhere near men's salary, and it was ultimately administrative work or secretarial or phone work, or even less than the menial work. All the men had the powerful positions, and women stayed home, expected to be barefoot and pregnant, bear the children, be at home, rely on their men for all the money. And it's so true that there have been parodies in commercials as popular as the progressive commercials, where they had for a brief time a black and white progressive commercial with Flo, but it was set in that era where, there'd be a scene with other adults. She would come in and start talking, and a guy would pop in and say, discussing finances is a no-no. And then she jumps in and says, what? I'm discussing, and then he cuts her off and says, shh, men are talking. That kind of shit, right? So the importance of the Barbie movie and why it was done in that way, to where different facets of women drove the narrative, drove the direction of the story in the movie, the plot, the premise, and were the focal point because of that history. Some of the themes of which still play out today. And pay disparity, workplace infringements. We've come a long way, but there's still that patriarchal supremacy aspect. And we were just not too long ago faced with that still with black actresses. So for Shakira to be like, it's so emasculating and all this other stuff, I deduced that was my response to that, that. But the other thing was maybe it's a cultural thing. Like maybe in South America, um, men are the powering arm in the household and in government and in politics, and women still rely on men to get them through, or else they'll kind of, or maybe the belief is, or else they'll kind of fade, and the house structure will fall apart, the family structure will fall apart. But it's like it's interesting that even at her level, international pop star, um, making so much money and having all this success, ultimately being, I'm theorizing, the breadwinner in her relationships, and possibly facing the same, and possibly has a history of facing the same kind of patriarchal attitudes when it comes to a woman's role in a relationship, in the household. Oh, because trust and believe, like, the U.S. may be slightly more progressive than other countries, but I feel like in other cultures, there's still this idea that the man rules with the iron fist, right? I just found it interesting that even at the level of acclaimed international success that she has, that she still has kind of this nuanced reliance that the man is to lead and to not, what'd she say? She said, wait a minute. Oh, she said she wanted her sons to feel powerful too while respecting women, something she felt Barbie didn't adequately portray. Um, and when I got to that part, I was just like, I could, I could kind of see that. There's nothing from what I've seen that gives me the impression that that is what was going on. Like, I don't know if Shakira was watching with her boys and was like, maybe the screen time, or maybe the idea that Ken was more in a supporting role. Like, there's nothing about it that says, oh, well, because it's so female centered and women have more of a voice in different roles and different facets, that it's mutually exclusive to a man's position or a seat in the same universe. And I'm like, I don't think that's what's going on. Like, it's that kind of attitude that sets women back a little bit. Like, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I'm like, those kind of statements gives the impression that a woman has to rely on a man. And Shakira, I know you've been to a lot of countries touring as the international pop star that you are, but have you seen society lately? Like, have you seen how it's been going on in the United States right now? Like, men have been failing women. And not just like as recent as last week, but for all time. Like, there's nothing about a woman that's threatening to a man's ego, a man in totality, anything that a man's got going on. There's nothing about a woman and her existence and her potential and her place in this world that takes away from a man. If a man wants to feel empowered and be empowered, that's ultimately his responsibility to do so. Like, there are no women stopping men from being who they want to be. The unfortunate thing is, the things that men have become lately isn't that impressive. And then I sat back and I was like, another interesting aspect about this, Shakira finding this movie emasculating and her wanting her sons to feel empowered, is that isn't this the same lady that allegedly in response to finding out that her husband cheated, she came home off the road or something and she opened the fridge and she found that, what was it, a jar of peanut butter or a jar of jelly or something was opened and eaten, and she knows her husband doesn't eat it. But wasn't it the same lady that allegedly in response to all this, she uprooted the entire family home, put it on the back of a flatbed and moved it so her husband couldn't have access to it? Wasn't it the same lady? Isn't this the same lady? Like, I'm not trying to say that like a man's masculinity is tied to big houses or anything, but that's a whole other level of petty. Like, most women, when they found out their dude's been cheating, they send them out the house all happy and stuff. And while their husband's at work, I think, or the partner's at work, he plays soccer or something, you just politely and, effectively pack up the house, all the effects, and move to an undisclosed location. But to take an entire house off of the foundation, off of the property, put it on the back of a flatbed. Not a regular flatbed, but one of those big ones where, they also move like mobile homes or container homes and stuff. On one of them suckers, and left. Isn't that the same lady? So it's like, please miss me with this. Because at the end of the day, if you're feeling some kind of way like this from watching a movie that's more importantly like a historical / biopic kind of movie, very necessary to support the evolution of the women's movement, especially off of the heels of Roe versus Wade being overturned, that you are missing the point entirely, and you are teaching your sons from this movie that about emasculation and I want my sons to be empowered too. It's like, first of all, it's too early. And secondly, you got to be careful with that, especially during this climate where, guys are not taking rejection very well. Like, it's one thing to teach your kids about having self-respect and dignity, but it's also very important to teach them about discipline, integrity, and respect as well. Like, that whole male empowerment thing, if not controlled and not taught in the right way, can lead to continued high level of entitlement. Like, trust and believe another person cannot take something from you. Another person's existence is not pushing down on you and is not a threat to your existence. It's just so interesting though that, like, even at her level, she still has somewhat of an outdated attitude or sense as it pertains to a male's value in her life, or a sense of such a thing. But that's what I got. Ain't got no more. Very, very interesting. Not entirely with it. Not even sure what it had to do with supporting the album. But could be a slow day for some folks. This is Mr. Fox, the I Refuse Podcast. Get into the I Refuse Podcast wherever you get your podcast. Season 5 available now. Follow, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also get into the other 2 podcasts. I Refuse Podcast, After Dark, and The Usual Suspects. And I will catch you guys later. Fendi, like the bag. This is the I Refuse.